Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Lurkin from Mobalytics, and I'm coming at you with a ball lightning build with Okuns. I found Stormhorn to be extremely underwhelming. If anyone's been following the guide, I just made a big change to the witch powers and the gems. I have found out that this witching hour one with purging touch, the 40-50% more damage every second, because your cast becomes eldritch, that doesn't work with ball lightning and Okuns because it's like its own little entity. So I've adjusted it to still have the Elder Sigil for 25% more damage to hexed enemies, Friend of the Bog for more main stat, and last but not least, Duststone for more damage when you apply hexes. So my setup in this build is not, these are correct, but these are not correct, and now I have to go and refarm some stuff because the only one that's working on here is this right here. So yeah, let's get into it. We're just going into a tier 90. I'm still in the process of leveling up my glyphs. This is the pit setup, which is Frost Nova and Iceblade enchant with Zol Ohm, Tam Watt. So, you proc your Decrepify, and then it, in turn, every time it procs, it gives you Offering to give you a Warcry. The guide might have Vex in there. I don't think I have a Vex yet, so this is where we are. But this build plays really good. In the pit, you don't really need teleport enchant, unless you're, say, speed farming. But for all intents and purposes, like Iceblade enchant with Frost Nova enchant is really good. Stacks up Enlightenment nice and fast. And you got all these Frost Novas going off. So, the state of Sorc right now, it is what it is, guys. Our class is just really balanced, and nothing's too crazy or overtuned, so this is just what we got, guys. But you can see you get some nice, like, 3 billion damage hits every now and again, and I believe a lot of the damage is coming from Grav. So when I have a 4-cast Grav right now, so every 4 cast of Ball Lightning sucks in enemies, and it deals a bunch of damage. Like, Grav is dealing a ton of damage. I still, I need to test it on the amulet versus, cause it could be the play to take Grav on the amulet and then take concussive strikes, but for now, this will do fine. And then I'm gonna, after this, maybe even before this, depending on how I edit the video, there's gonna be some boss kills and some speed farming stuff, so you can sort of see how it performs in Nightmare Dungeons. Just like, it's really fast. There's some good setups you can do. So go straight for this Aura Champion guy and just start ripping. Then there's a lot of room in my gear for, like, I know I have all the Ubers and stuff, but there's a lot of, like, attack speed that I can get. Attack speed is really important in this build because of gravitational. Like, even if you do hit 20 ball lightnings really easily, you still want a ton of attack speed. Because you want that gravitational going off as much as possible, because it provides this, like, massive damage pop. I thought I was going to like Okuns a lot more. I thought I was going to like Stormhorn a lot more, and I still sort of like Stormhorn, but its damage is just so much not there that it's actually unplayable, so there's just not really much you can do about it. But as you can see, we're pretty tanky. We're hanging out in these explosions. I'm just chilling. I'm doing my thing. It'll be even tankier when I get the witch gems set up. But we're doing pretty good. And, I'm going to take this Blast Wave Shrine. Because why not? Why not abuse a nice little broken overpower scaling every now and again? Give me that overpower pop. Yep. And that's the power of overpower. Something that Sorc can't really do. Alright. So, it is a little slow without TP enchant, I will say. But I think for when you are like approaching the point where pits are starting to take a while, the Frost Nova enchant is just really good. And then the Tamwat Zolom is just so good at executing enemies. You know, once you get down to 10%, they just get nuked, like right there. So it just adds, it basically adds 10% damage as all enemies are dying rather quickly. So let's see how the boss is. Let's get behind him. Not too worried about the stacks. Boss kill's really good. It does pretty good damage. Yeah, 5-minute T90. We'll definitely be able to get this up to a T100. You'll definitely be able to level your glyphs on your own. It's just there's going to be, once you hit glyph level 80 or so, there's going to be a bit of on level. It's going to be a bit of, you know, you're not going to be able to do plus 10s anymore. So as you can see, like, I can't level up these glyphs, but, like, I can do 70% chances on here. And, you know, it just is what it is. Like, right there, I got 2 fails. So it can wear on you just a little bit. You know, you go and you do a pit, and then you're only able to get 2 out of the 4 upgrades that are possible. So, fuck, man, that's just Sorc. But, all right, we're going to move on to some different content. All right, so we are at Varshaan now, and Varshaan's a pretty important boss. Mainly because, you know, you're going to want a really good Tel Rasha, and like I have, from doing the seasonal activity, I have so many Malignant Hearts that I haven't even been doing these in rotations. So let's just sort of show how it performs. You know, if you want to farm it by yourself, pretty good, man. You know, can't really complain with that. That was some pretty good stuff. So let's take it next into some speed farm content and just show you how good it is in those Nightmare Dungeons, Sorc specialty. Hey guys, we are in a Nostrova Deepwood, and as it stands right now, Nightmare Dungeons are the best source to acquire Obusite, and that's because of the seasonal blessing right here. Yeah, Urn of Masterworking, 40% chance to boost the chance for existing sources to drop additional Obusite, so you get a ton of Obusite when you're doing Nightmare Dungeons. And the setup for Nightmare Dungeons is Teleport and Frost Nova enchant. You don't need Iceblade enchant when you are running Shaco. Just make sure everything's good. So the setup for this is Flicker Steps and Shaco. The runes don't really matter. I think I have Tamwat and then Zolthul. Just, you know, Watt goes off so often that you're proccing all these Frost Novas. Just kind of cool to freeze things. But the big kicker here, the change, is like dropping Perdition for Harlequin because of all this cooldown that you get, because you don't really need the damage, and then Flicker Steps over the regular boots because you're going to use the flickers to reset your ultimate now. You're not, because enemies die so fast, you're not going to be getting a ton of Orange Herald procs, and you want this attacks reduce evades cooldown by 2.5 seconds where normal boots have 1.5, so you're able to just go so much faster. And as you can see, we're just gonna cruise. And I opt to not run Raiment because I'll get more evades without it. But as you can see, like every single attack, I basically get an evade. And the amount of Obusite that you can get is crazy. Like, let me check how much I have now. I have 4,500, so we'll check that number after. And these Nightmare Dungeons are really important right now, mainly because, you know, if you want to unlock all your powers, you got to find those like 5% chance freaking things, those shrines or whatever. So doing a lot of Nightmare Dungeons is just like part of it right now, and this is so incredibly fast. Like, the one thing Necro and Druid and all them can never have on us is our speed. So just how fast this is at farming. Just whipping through the hood. And then the seasonal activity you fly through to in this setup. Like, this is just the setup. And then I think after we finish the dungeon, I'm going to just clear the whole thing because I want all that juicy obusite. Just show you how fast it is. It's ridiculous. And before anyone asks, I've tried hybridating with splintering. You can do it, but I don't know. I just don't. I tried it. It just didn't seem that necessary. It's like, I don't know. Just blowing everything up anyway. Alright, and then as always we have to check this last in these dungeons. It's really important to check like the entire dungeon because you're looking for a shrine, so that you can upgrade your powers. Well, you can unlock the powers that you don't have. Alright, and then let's see what our obusite went to. We had about 1,000 obusite, 1,100, and then we missed a little bit from the beginning, so maybe 1,300. So you're looking at like 1,000 to 1,500 plus obusite per run, so that's pretty awesome. All right, and then I'm gonna go back, and then I'll sort of just go over the gear. You know, you can look at the build guides. The setups change a little bit, the skill trees change a little bit. Sometimes I don't really change the skill tree, depending on the setup. So the general setup, the enchantments are as follows. Like the general enchantments. Oh, my game is fragging out. Come on. The general enchantments are teleport and ice blade enchantment. You know, you have your teleport for movement. And you have your Ice Blade enchantment for reducing all your cooldowns and having a bunch of Ice Blades out. The more Ice Blades you have out, the better uptime you have on Enlightenment because you need to alternate skills. So that main alternation that you're doing is alternating Ball Lightning cast with Ice Blade spam. So that's that. And then when we get into the pit, when you get into the pit and bossing, you don't really need teleport enchantment. So I opt to run Frost Nova enchant and Ice Blade enchantment. Because we can drop this Thul rune here, and then you put this back on, and then you can run like Tamwat, Zol-Om. That's like that's a bread and butter combo from last season. You know, you get your War Cry, and then you get your Decrepify for executing, reducing their damage, stuff like that. Or you can throw Vex in there. I think I have Vex in the guide, and I also talk about Tamwat, Zol-Om. This is for your pit setup, and you put your normal boots back on. You know, speed farming, obviously, as I said, Shaco and Flicker Steps. And then last but not least, for speed farming, it's your Shaco and your Flicker Steps. And then you don't need Ice Blade enchantment because everything's dying so fast, you're not getting any value out of it. So then you just run Teleport and Frost Nova enchant. And then actually for farming, you wouldn't even need the Thul enchantment because you're going to have so many Frost Novas going off. But I don't know. I have it all set up right in the build guide. You can just check that out. But general, let's go over like the main gear that you're going to be wearing. Just sort of talk about why I have them. Perdition, obviously, a ton of crit chance, ranks the core, and 60% damage. Just can't beat it. Shroud of False Death is just so good now. +1 to all passives. Now that they've reworked a lot of our passives in the skill tree, such as Inner Flames, increased damage while healthy. Hoarfrost is great. Icy Touch is now all damage vulnerable. And Permafrost is not. This is wrong. This is wrong. They even noted it in the notes. Permafrost is you deal 54. You know, this will be 54% all damage while you have a Frost skill on your action bar. It's not just Frost skills. They just never updated it. So there's that. And then I rock Stormswell. With some. I think the planner is core, attack speed, crit chance. I just couldn't get those. Then you have your lucky hit chance to freeze stuff, so that's really good. You could throw some Frost Nova size in here as well if you wanted on one of these. I think I just use this gear across a lot of builds, so I just have lucky hit chance to freeze on. And then next we go onto our pants. It's just your stand. This is where you get all your armor from. And as you can see, I'm like pretty overcapped on armor. You should really always be using your incenses. You have your attack speed elixir, and then incenses are so cheap. Like, I could craft so many of these. I always have a Redamine Buzz for max life. The Soothing Spices really helps cap out my armor and make sure my resists are good. And then Sage's Whisper for your intelligence. So there's that. And then this is where I slot Gravitational. After creating 2 Ball Lightnings, your next Ball Lightning implodes, pulling in enemies and dealing a flat amount of lightning damage. And this damage scales with Ball Lightning. I don't exactly know how it scales, but it does a boatload of damage. So you're really going to be looking out for a 2-cast gravitational. And then lastly, we have our BL boots. You know, intelligence and ball lightning are really what you're looking for on here. And then you could take move speed or max life or mana per second. These are just what I got. Got some evade cooldown reduction, and then this is where your Orange Herald goes to ensure you have good uptime on your unstable currents, because your UC is pretty important because you're getting all your vulnerable from lightning spears. And like if you have really bad uptime on your unstable currents because your gear's bad, you can always drop Hex of Shattering for Aura. God, now I'm on the spot here. I'm gonna have to find it. It's impossible to find. Shaken Soul right here. Your Eldritch, you know, your Witch Power effects apply vulnerable. So anything in your little Aura of Siphoning will be vulnerable. So you can always just drop one of these hexes. And I would drop Shattering. Okay, let's get back to it. So those are the boots. Got your attacks reduced evade boots, and then you can run a sword or a wand. You know, int life, and then you could put crit damage here. I usually put lucky hit chance to restore on builds that are really mana intensive because it helps. It just helps, man. And just like losing like 70 crit damage doesn't really affect this build because there's nothing in the build like splintering that scales exponentially with crit damage, insanely multiplicatively. I just put conceited here, extra 30% damage, and then the important thing here is the chance for ball lightning projectiles to cast twice. You're really going to want that. And I've seen in some other ball lightning builds, I need to talk about the weapon tempers. I choose critical strike damage because I do not trust Blizzard to actually have shock crit damage work for everything. I just don't trust them. I take generic crit damage because it's a little bit lower, but I know it's going to work for everything, all sources of damage. I don't, what if shock critical strike chance for some reason doesn't work for Okins because it's not a shock skill. It's just lightning damage. I don't know. I just don't trust Blizzard at this point. And a lot of times I want gear to be usable across multiple builds. Like I will use this piece of gloves across different core skill builds. So I can't take shock crit damage. It's a little bit less, but that's where I'm at with that. You have your Okun's Catalyst. The biggest things here are chance for ball lightning projectiles to cast twice. You're really looking, you want 180%, and then the rest of it is sort of whatever, but you're really looking for chance for ball lightning projectiles to cast twice. As I was talking about with, whatchamacallit right here, this gravitational, this thing is dealing dummy damage when it implodes. I need a 2. I need a max aspect of this. It's very important. And then after that, the attacks, the ranks the ball lightning, and then the attack speed after casting defensive skill. The DR for each active ball lightning is very nice, but it's fluff. Next is Starless Skies. You're gonna want a triple crit attack speed on here. I'm just, I'm doing so many builds. I'm not willing to reset this thing again. Like this is just acceptable for me. And then you got your Tel Rasha. You have your frost skills, your flame skills, and your shock skills. So you're getting 75% damage out of this. You're going to want GA cooldown. You're going to want to max that out, baby. Cooldown, cooldown, cooldown. All right. And then for an amulet, you are looking for an amulet with a passive and intelligence. And then whatever the hell you can find is a third stat, whether that's max life, attack speed. Ideally, it would be another passive such as Inner Flames. Like Inner Flames or Icy Touch or Glass Cannon, one of those that can just give you more damage out of the build. I have an attack speed amulet, I'm cool with that. This is my amulet. It's fine. I want evade cooldown reduction, and then I take unstable currents cooldown reduction, mainly because there's just times where sometimes your Orange Herald isn't proccing all the time and stuff like that, depending on the content. So I really want to keep that good uptime of unstable currents. And if you wanted your amulet to be usable across all your builds, besides burning builds, you would take evade cooldown reduction, and you take critical strike damage as your tempers. And then I put shredding blades on here because it's just the most reliable. Sometimes your ice armor breaks. They're both 35%, so shredding blades always goes on my amulet in my builds. You can look over the skill trees. I can touch on them briefly. I think the biggest things here, there's really not too much going on. I'll touch on some things. You know, you have your Shimmering Teleport for DR. That's really great when you're using your teleport enchantment, because every time you evade teleport, you're going to get DR. You can sort of feel it when you take it off for Frost Nova enchant for the pit. It's whatever. Shimmering Ice Armor, you are spending a ton of mana, so this helps you keep your Ice Armor up all the time. And then depending on your setup, if you're using the Frost Nova rune, you do not need points in Frost Nova because it's giving you Mystical Frost Nova for free. I got tired of changing my skill tree, so I just always put the points in here. And my skill tree is not going to look like the build guides because those are specific to the variants in the most optimal way. And my skill tree is normally set up for me to do the least work when I'm swapping between everything. So yeah. And then we have Roaring Ice Blades. That's really awesome. You can experiment with Invoked, get a little bit more attack speed, but Roaring Ice Blades is good. And then we get our Vulnerable from our Spear, and it helps you stagger enemies faster with the stuns. I still take points in Primordial Binding despite not getting damage out of it. You get a ton of movement speed and mana regen, so it's still great to take. Next, Inner Flames, just 24% more damage. Max out Ball Lightning, and I still like making, it's really, I think Wizards, it's still the way to go. I thought about mages for a while, more damage against stunned enemies, but I just don't know if you're going to make enough crackling. I don't know. When you're like Giga min-maxed, you can probably take mages, and then you can rely on Static Discharge and see if that can make enough crackling to keep your bar full for Ceaseless Conduit. But for me, for general everything, it's just Wizards, dude. And then, you can put... I think I only have 2 points in this. You can see how many points that you need. I'm not sure. I just maxed it out. We have your 3 frost things that we talked about. Hoarfrost, Freezing Lot, Icy Touch, more damage to Vulnerable. And then again, this is all damage, not just frost skills. I personally only take 1 point in Unstable Occurrence. The rank 5 bonus is worthless, and I just don't really have issues with the uptime, so I don't bother, putting points in it just to reduce its cooldown. And then last but not least, let's talk about key passives. So Enlightenment is really good if you have good uptime on it. It's going to be way more damage. But if you're really struggling, say you're dying a lot, or your cooldowns aren't good whatsoever, you just run Verse Mastery. So Verse Mastery, it's 25% DR, and it's really bad when you're mobbing because it only changes by 10% of the time when you're mobbing, so it's only 10% damage. But when you're bossing, it's 50% damage because if there's no other targets for it to hit, it's 500% damage at a 10% chance is 50% damage. So you can think of this as 50% on single target, negligible on mobbing, and 25% DR. So Enlightenment is the goal because it's way better, but Verse Mastery is always an option. All right, let's get into the Paragon. And again, my Paragon is probably not the exact same setup in order that my build guides are. I just like... This is just what I have. It's just how I built it. I don't look at my build guides one-to-one when I make my actual build. I just go. All right, so starter, you have to take it. And then I have Tactician. Tactician is really great now. It's boosting our non-fizz for Enlightenment, and it's giving us 15% damage now, and then 10 after using a defensive skill, and then just 10% all damage. Next, I move into Frigid Fate. I like the path this way now. Get this max life early. It's huge. You can just slot. It's a quick dip through to get Elementalist for 15% more damage. You have Ice Blades. Hitting enemies, giving you 5%. You have all your lightning damage, and then occasionally you have your Flame Shield on enemies, and I'm not 100% on... Let's look at the Witch Powers. I'm not 100% if Hex of Flames counts towards Elementalist, but you are dealing fire damage to them, so maybe it is, but it's not that big of a deal if it's not. So we have Elementalist there, and then we just sort of path through, and I'm grabbing Frigid Fate for 60% damage to all vulnerable enemies. Fundamental Release next. I have Exploit on here. I think the build guide, I probably have Unleash on one of these boards over Exploit. I just do not have Unleash leveled up. And I started off this season playing Fireball, which has Inferno. So you're not... Unleash didn't work for me across... I needed to level up 5 glyphs that I can use on every build. So that's why I have Exploit over Unleash. But Unleash will be, let's find Unleash. It's got to be down here. I don't have it leveled up yet. Unleash will be 8% damage. It's going to boost all your magic nodes, and it's going to increase all your damage. And then it's going to increase your mana regen too. So that's why Unleash is better. But I just have Exploit. It's sort of the same damage. Fundamental Release. The ultimate skill damage does nothing for unstable currents. That doesn't affect it at all. You're just after this for the anytime you apply vulnerable or critically strike an enemy, they take 10% more damage. So you hit an enemy with 5 crits, boom, 50% damage. This board has some really good nodes, a lot of max life, DR, and then we just path through. And then our next board is Static Surge. The mana regen is completely it doesn't do anything because it only occurs every 8 seconds. And like, you're not really going to notice it. It's like a 30% boost every 8 seconds. It should just give you 30% mana regen for 8 seconds when you proc it. Honestly, I'm going to give that feedback because this, one little bump every 8 seconds isn't it. I digress. It's 50% damage after you crit 8 times in a second with shock skills. I believe this is going off a lot. Or at least it's always active. I do take Adept here. It does increase the orbit size, this 30% increased area. So you're dealing, as you're moving around, you're hitting more enemies. And it got a bump to its mastery damage. It's not even upgraded all the way. It's level 89, and I'm already at 450% mastery damage. This will get north of 500%. And then, I still have another int down here that I can take. And then increases your mastery skill damage. This will get up to around, I think, 14%. So the additive, despite its additional bonus not being damage in the form of times damage, it helps a lot. And the fat amount of additive and the huge 14% mastery damage make it usable. Last but not least, Destruction on Ceaseless Conduit with a massive 74 dex here for we're getting, you're going to be looking at about 500% crit damage near it once I get this fully maxed out. It's got some nice lightning damage, some nice max life, some max lightning res, some all DR, and some crit chance. So that's really nice. And then when you have crackling energy charges, it deals yada yada yada. You're just looking at this. When you have crackling energy, you deal 60% more damage. That's all this really matters. And let me pull up the build guide, and I can talk about the witch powers because mine are not perfectly set up. So the witch powers in this build are going to be the cycle. This is purely to take a growth and decay power. And then we have our aura of siphoning. So you have that little aura around you, that green thing, and then you have your aura spec, so it's bigger. Our site is wrong. It's 35% damage. I'm going to get that updated. And the game says plus, but it is X. It is 35% more damage multiplicative. I've tested it. And then we have Soul Harvest to get more main stat when you use a cooldown near an enemy. This is really good. And then I have 2 hexes, and those are related to another thing later. So I have Hex of Flames to apply a hex, and then Hex of Shattering to have them reduce damage and just apply another hex. And let me move over to the endgame setup so you can sort of see. In the starter version, I take Killing Wind over Duststone because it's easier to craft and you'll get some crit chance out of it. But you don't really have to. You can go straight to what these are. So you have Elder Sigil. When you hex an enemy, your mastery skills do 25% more damage. And we have Friend of the Bog. When you have 3 growth and decay powers, you get 10% main stat, 10% max life. This always unhindered thing doesn't apply to Ball Lightning because we are already unhindered all the time while we have Okuns because we're always unhindered with it. And then lastly, I just take Duststone. I believe it's actually 2%, not 2.5%. I think they nerfed it down a little bit. We'll have to get the site updated. So that's just another 6% damage because you have this aura and you have 2 hexes. All right, that's the build. I think I've got it right where I want it, and it took a little bit. And yeah, that was good. I it was so annoying that Purging Touch and Witching Hour didn't work with it. So I sort of had to reference some other stuff and see what the go-to was for it. Shout out Northwire for I noticed he put Friend of the Bog on all his stuff, so appreciate that. Took a little yoink. There was really not much else to choose anyway. So yeah, we'll get there. This is the build. I don't know what I'm moving on to next. We'll see. Either splintering or meteor, or I don't know. Maybe we'll do ice shards and nobody will care because it's terrible. All right, I'll see you guys. If you watched the whole thing, thanks. I hope you learned some stuff, and I really like the build. I think it's really great this season. I'm blasting everything. I'm speed farming really fast. I'm gonna be able to get my glyphs up all the way and just basically do all content in the game. And it kind of sucks that Sorc's so much more below every other class, but it just is what it is, man. What are you gonna do? Peace.